Okay, this is the third of 4 modules on weight bearing. Now, in the first two, we covered the general function of a skeleton, and we talked about the actual bone structure itself, and we had a little demo of a collagen matrix with the minerals in it, and we basically used this model of the string to represent the collagen, and we used uh, flour and water basically to simulate the calcium and phosphorus, and ended up with a little representation of a bone. So now we're trying to figure out, now that we know how it's put together, how can we influence it? So if we have this program we've given you, obviously we assume something can be changed, right? So how does it change? Well, if you go online, there's a lot of videos, YouTube videos and the like, that talk about the change, but a lot of them are they're full of medical terms and diagrams and things like that, and I think sometimes the general principles getting lost in the middle of that. So remember, we're kind of oversimplifying things here in this module series, so that we can hold on to some basic ideas, and then you can go back later and watch some of those videos and maybe have a better appreciation for what they're talking about. So basically what we're trying to figure out is what affects this density, how hard this thing is, right? What's the recipe? Well, there's a lot of things that do influence it. Genetics is one thing. Medications, and some medications cause problems with bone formation. We now have medications out there now that are helping with bone formation. Diet is important. Calcium, obviously, we talk about drinking calcium for strong bones and teeth. So taking calcium in your diet is important. Vitamin D, because of the hormone relationships that are involved with bone formation, becomes very important. And there's some disease processes that interfere with bone formation. But the one that we're really focusing on in this module series is weight-bearing activity. So why does weight-bearing assist with bone density? Well, the reason is that bones change when they experience stress. Now that might seem like kind of an odd concept, except for when I think of my own kids, when they're given assignments for the next couple, 3 weeks, they're pretty quiet, not a lot of activity until we get really close to that due date. And once that stress level increases, their activity increases quite a bit. So the bone is no different. When the bone feels a stress, it basically wants to respond to protect itself and to prepare for future similar stresses. So it basically says, this is something that apparently is happening to me. I want to make sure that the bone is built in a way that's strong enough to handle these forces. Now, if you take those stresses away, you get the opposite. The bone realizes that, wow, we really haven't been stressed in this way in a long time, and that means this material that's here is really considered kind of excess. And so the bone basically starts to take some of that away, because it feels like it doesn't need it. So basically the increased stress causes bone to create material or make material, and the decreased stress causes it to break down that material or resorb that material. So how exactly do they actually adapt, though? And this is what we're trying to work on with your weight-bearing activities. There is a law called Wolff's Law, and in a nutshell, what Wolff's Law says is that as a bone's form or function changes, its internal architecture will change. So what does that mean? Well, we remember that protein collagen matrix and those mineral crystals that we put together. The general makeup is controlled by 2 types of bone cells. One's called an osteoblast, and the other one is called an osteoclast. Now, osteo means bone, so for both of the words, if they're both talking about bone, and blast actually means forming, and clast means breaking apart. So an osteoblast is a bone cell that is forming material, and an osteoclast is a bone cell that's breaking things down. So how does this forming and breaking down happen? Well, there's 2 basic processes. One is called modeling, and the other is called remodeling. Modeling is really about reshaping the bone into something different, and remodeling is more about repair. So you can kind of think of it that the reshaping focus is probably predominant in kids because they're growing and changing shape, And the remodeling is more the predominant forces in adults because your skeleton's already set and already has a basic shape that you're going to use. Not that there isn't some crossover, but that's kind of in general how you can kind of separate them out. So in reshaping, basically you have some material in the bone being taken away from some sites, and you have new material being laid down in other sites, and as a result you end up with a different shape. Let's make a little example of that. So I'm going to use this Play-Doh to represent the bone, okay? And we're going to put it down here. I'll show you on this board in just a second. So I'm going to basically make it into sort of a rectangular shape, okay? So that's the rectangular shape, okay? Now I'm going to take some bone away from part of this bone that we have. Some material is now gone. So now I've taken some bone away, and now I'm going to use the red to signify new bone material, and I'm going to add bone material someplace else. So I'm going to add material here, and now what I have is a new bone shape. So I have a bone that now has material taken away from this location, and I have material that's been added towards the ends, and now I have a different looking bone than I did before. So modeling processes let us change the shape of the bone, and now I have this new material is in a location that can actually, it's brand new, it's ready to go, it's ready to be used. So then what's remodeling? Well, remodeling, remember, was more of a repair idea. So let's make a bone again. Okay, I'm going to lay this bone down next to our other one. We'll kind of make our little rectangle again. So now we have that original rectangle shape, right? And this time we're going to take some bone away, just like we did before. So we're going to take some bone away. Remember, this is the repair concept. And so this is the remodeling. And we're going to take our new bone and we're going to add it back to the same location that we took the bone material out from. So now we have a bone repair. So we've fixed this bone because it obviously had some stresses in that area, and it's come in because it knew something was happening here, and it replaced it with newer, stronger bone, right? So now we have, this is our modeling example, and this is our remodeling example. So interestingly, you can kind of see the adult skeleton kind of replaces itself about every 10 years. And the way that can happen is as this process keeps happening, you keep changing blue for red, and eventually you would have a completely red bone here, or a new bone. So that basically lets us see how the osteoblasts and the osteoclasts, because of stresses, can make the bone shape either change or they can repair it and make it stronger. So when we have a kiddo who is not able to bear weight either as much as we would like or in the way that we would like, we have a skeletal system that's at risk for being able to do the job that it's supposed to do. So what we try to do with that weight bearing program is to create some of those stresses. We basically step in and create the things that normally should be happening. We start to recreate those forces with activities and with equipment so that we can help the bone structure develop as it's supposed to. So now we're getting really close to being able to explain that weight bearing program, aren't we? So in the fourth module, what we're going to talk about is the specifics of that actual weight bearing program or those weight bearing activities.